Tonight is the night. You've pulled out all the stops, rented a tuxedo, polished your charm, and chosen the most luxurious destination for a romantic evening. As you pull up under the glowing arches, your date stares at the McDonald's sign across the parking lot and says, "Wow, I didn't know you thought I was that special." Oh, but they are. You guide them to a booth, sticky, wobbly, and looking like it's been through several unsanctioned food fights. Then, brimming with confidence, you approach the counter. "Two number twos, please. Oh, and can I get both of them without onions? The first one, no pickles?" "No," says the McDonald's cashier. "You'll take your food however our minimum wage employees decide to make it." You nod solemnly, handing over your $42.66 for 2 burgers, 2 medium fries, and 2 medium drinks. The fries are half crumbs left over from batches made 5 days ago. The burgers are freezer-burnt slivers of meat, as thick as a microscope slide. But your date is impressed. As they take a sip of their drink, they grin. "Tastes exactly like the disinfectant they cleaned the machine with. Delicious." It's a good date, and it's financially ruined you. But why is fast food so expensive nowadays? The reason why is not what you're expecting, and it is changing the dining habits of Americans for the first time in 60 years. Find out the truth in today's episode of The Infographic Show. Okay, let's get straight to the facts. The average price of a Big Mac is $5.29. A Whopper costs about $7.60, unless you're near Infographics HQ, where it climbs to $7.99. Of course, prices aren't the same everywhere. A lot depends on things like how far your local spot is from a distribution center. The farther your fries have to travel, the more gas it takes them to get there, and that extra cost ends up in your meal. It also affects the availability of products, which is why you won't find a glass Coke in places like Waterton, New York. The heavy glass costs much more to ship than plastic. Another factor affecting price is demographics. If you live in a ritzy area, then the companies figure you're willing to cough up a little extra for the same burger that they serve everywhere else. We checked out a Burger King near the beach in Manhattan Beach, Los Angeles. Even though it's just 10 miles from our HQ, the Whopper there costs a full $1 more. Meanwhile, over in Compton, that same Whopper was $1 cheaper. So price point difference is obvious. At the location near the beach, you're paying for the SoCal glamour. But everyone knows that the Whopper isn't enough. You need to combo it to make it a full meal, adding a side of day-old medium French fries and a medium drink that is suspiciously watered down and maybe flavored with a hint of cleaning solution from the soda machine. And now you're looking at a Whopper meal for $13.98 in a rougher neighborhood, or $14.49 if you're lucky enough to live near the beach. Back in 2018, though, that same meal would have cost you a grand total of $6.78 if you upgraded from small to medium, give or take $1 depending on your location. Ask around what's causing fast food prices to skyrocket, and you'll get 2 common answers: inflation due to COVID-19 and workers asking for better pay in minimum wage jobs. Spend even a few minutes watching the news and you'll hear plenty of dire warnings about higher minimum wage initiatives supposedly making food prices skyrocket. Fat Brand's founder and former CEO of Fatburger, Andrew Weiderhorn, famously appeared on Fox News to warn that a $20 minimum wage bill would mean consumers would have to end up making the difference with the higher costs. Fast forward to 2024, and Andrew Weiderhorn found himself in hot water, indicted on federal charges for allegedly stealing $47 million from his own company through shareholder loans. Just to put that into perspective, that $47 million could have covered the annual salaries of around 1,100 employees earning $20 minimum wage. Fatburger had 4,000 employees back in 2017. So, while Weiderhorn argued that the higher wages would force food prices up because someone's going to pay for it, he was allegedly pocketing enough money to cover 25% of those salaries at the proposed new wage. Across Europe, the average salaries for McDonald's employees range between $17 and $21 an hour. A Big Mac, meanwhile, costs $6.77. That's over $1 more than in the US. But keep in mind, there's going to be a regional cost fluctuation for a variety of factors, including import-export costs and shipping of ingredients. In Denmark, McDonald's employees make on average $22 an hour, and their Big Macs are $5.69, cheaper than American Big Macs. Oh, and that's not it, because what American CEOs don't want you to know is that McDonald's employees also get 6 weeks of vacation a year. Now, to be fair, Denmark's fast food employees are mostly part-time, according to 3F, the union that represents them. But that doesn't mean the restaurants themselves aren't running full-time operations, just like in the US. So any argument that it's only part-time work to avoid implementing a similar minimum wage here is basically just a distraction. We checked the hours of operations for 3 McDonald's locations in Copenhagen, Denmark's capital. One location is open from 12 a.m. to 2 a.m. or 8 a.m. to 2 a.m. depending on the day. The second runs from 10 a.m. to 11 p.m. every day. And the third was open also from 12 a.m. to 2 a.m. or 8 a.m. to 2 a.m. depending on the day. Some McDonald's in America are open 24 hours, but most operate from 4 a.m. to 11 p.m. So on average, restaurants in both nations are open the same amount of hours and thus have similar wage cost totals even if most employees are part-time. Denmark employees also have extra pay when they have to work at what are considered off-hour shifts. This means workers who have to work late or on the weekend earn additional pay on top of their normal wage. If your mind isn't blown yet, holidays are paid at double the rate, and there's normal overtime like everywhere else. Oh, and if you're 21 or older, you can also get a pension plan from McDonald's. Also, let's go back to those 6 weeks of vacation a year. In Denmark, it's federal law that all employees must receive 5 weeks of paid vacation a year. Denmark's 3F union negotiated with McDonald's for 6 weeks of paid vacation instead. Now, if you Google how many vacation or PTO days a year McDonald's gives in the US, you'll get a figure as high as 25. Except that is being skewed by benefits of corporate employees. If you're working behind the counter, you can expect 0 paid time off or as much as 10 days, depending on how long you've been at the company. At this point, some might bring up Denmark's higher tax rates, and they would be right. The average tax rate in Denmark is about 36%, compared to roughly 15% in the US. But those taxes come with some serious perks. Danish citizens get most of their doctor visits and treatment free of charge. And then there's free hospital stays, free nursing care for the elderly or disabled, and free dental care until the age of 22. And even then, many treatments receive reimbursement from the state. Danish citizens also get free schooling, including university, state pension, and even childcare. Meanwhile, in the US, things are a bit more complicated. If you don't have health insurance, you're basically out of luck, and even if you do, there's no guarantee your insurance company could still deny treatment for all sorts of reasons, with the primary one being that they're not exactly fans of losing money. Still not convinced minimum wage has nothing to do with high fast food prices? There's been numerous studies conducted on the impact of minimum wage on food prices. One study by the USDA investigated the correlation between increases in minimum wage and the effect on food prices. What it found was that every 50-cent raise would increase food prices by less than 1% on average at most stores and around 1% in restaurants. Back when Seattle raised minimum wage to $13 an hour in the mid-2010s, pundits claimed it would skyrocket the price of food, with the cost passed directly on to the consumer. However, a University of Washington study concluded that there was no effect on food prices by Seattle's wage hike. Study after study confirms these results. Minimum wage increases have a negligible impact on food prices. But let's talk about another factor that might be driving up food prices: CEO salaries. In 2016, CEOs earned on average 271 times what the average worker earned. Today, that number has climbed to over 290 times. This marks the largest and fastest rise in average CEO compensation in modern history. Per the Economic Policy Institute, which studied CEO compensation, exorbitant CEO pay is a major contributor to rising inequality that we could safely do away with. CEOs are getting more because of their power to set pay and because so much of their pay is stock-related, not because they're increasing their productivity or possess specific high-demand skills, widening the gap between very high earners and the bottom 90%. The economy would suffer no harm if CEOs were paid less or were taxed more. America truly is number one at making the rich richer, and that's the way they like it, which is why you'll see fast food CEOs often blaming inflation for higher costs. But just how true is that? Well, it's not. Between 2014 and 2024, the United States saw inflation rise by about 31%. For the last 110 years, the average rate of inflation was around 3.3% a year, but those numbers are all skewed by some major historical events. Between 2000 and 2020, the average rate of inflation was around 2.5% a year, but in 2021 that skyrocketed to 4.7%, then 8% in 2022, and finally starting its downward trend to 4.1% in 2023. This was a result of the COVID-19 pandemic disrupting global supply chains, with workers unable to produce or ship goods due to lockdown, and countries closely scrutinizing imports. Inflation globally exploded. So how is this 10-year 31% inflation rate compared with prices of fast food? If those defending company profits are right, then we should see a similar correlation between real inflation and fast food prices, right? We should, but we don't. Take Popeyes, for example. The food prices increased by 86% in the same 10-year period. Burger King, Arby's, and Wendy's saw an increase of 55%. Taking the lead, though, is McDonald's, who knows a good opportunity when they see it, and doubled its food prices with a whopping 100% increase in prices since 2014. What's curious is that most companies saw a spike in food prices starting back in the mid-2010s, with a huge spike in 2019 and 2020. That was naturally due to various issues related to the pandemic, but even when the panic officially receded in 2022, prices continued to climb at an astronomical rate. Companies had realized that nobody was really complaining, and they decided if they'd gotten away with it for this long, why not go for broke? It's the surge in the mid-2010s, though, that is of particular note, because that's when companies started doing two things that they don't want you to know about that have significantly raised prices. The first of these has to do with the device most of you are currently watching this episode on. With the smartphone revolution came the convenience revolution, and suddenly people had access to any product they could possibly want with the press of a button. You could go on Amazon and order a box of Dungeons & Dragons collectible miniatures, hop on Wish for some fast fashion, and any number of food apps when you got hungry. Fast food companies saw the explosion in popularity of apps like DoorDash and Grubhub, and they wanted a piece of the action for themselves. In 2019, McDonald's made some big moves in the tech world, spending $300 million to acquire a tech development company, Dynamic Yield, and investing another $3.7 million in mobile app developer Plexure. The aim was to increase the restaurant's reach into cyberspace, developing an app that customers could use to earn discounts on products and thus increase brand loyalty. But it also opened up a lot of online marketing opportunities for McDonald's, all aimed at increasing overall revenues. Of course, that cost has to go somewhere. It's the extra filling in your Big Mac. Turns out, it's not just the secret sauce adding weight to your burger, it's a little tech investment too. In 2024, Burger King invested $300 million of its own money in revamping its entire brand identity. That money is being spent largely on physically upgrading restaurants and refurbishing for a cleaner, more modern look. And those rising Whopper prices are helping to pay for it. How about the additional $150 million invested into app development and online advertising? That is nearly $500 million being invested outside of usual annual expenditures. And it's not just Burger King. Plenty of other fast food chains are jumping on the app bandwagon, pouring huge sums into developing and supporting their own apps, because who doesn't want a smartphone stuffed with 100 restaurant apps, each waiting to be hunted down the moment you step into a different spot? Still, the discounts can be pretty sweet, just as long as you're dining solo. Fast food apps do offer some pretty decent deals, bringing item prices down to something that feels, well, reasonable. But those deals often take time to earn, and they can only be used one at a time, so no combining a discount on fries with that sweet burger deal. And if you're taking a date to McDonald's, well, they better have their own app and their own rewards program, or you're paying full price for their meal. Then there's another massive cost weighing heavily on the entire food industry. While hard data on this expense is scarce, thanks to financial details being carefully kept under wraps, it doesn't take much imagination to see how it is significantly impacting the cost of food. Celebrity endorsements have skyrocketed in the fast food sector, and it is the consumer who is footing the bill. With the rise of influencers, fast food marketing teams have jumped at the chance to tap into this cultural obsession and push their products, leading to a surge in celebrity-backed campaigns over the past few years. Take 2020, for example. McDonald's teamed up with Travis Scott to offer a special meal, which included a quarter pounder with bacon and cheese, fries, barbecue sauce, and a Sprite. But if that wasn't your taste, you could instead go to Burger King in 2021 and get a Lil Huddy's chicken sandwich as part of their Keep It Real meals. A year later, Doja Cat endorsed Taco Bell's return of the Mexican pizza, and Tom Brady fronted a campaign at Subway. The list goes on and on. And while celebrities have occasionally endorsed fast food products in the past, in the mid-2010s, celebrity endorsements absolutely exploded. This was in tandem with the rise and domination of social media, and it grew to a fever pitch with platforms like TikTok, taking the world by storm. Social media blitzes featuring high-profile celebrities, along with their signature meals, appeared on phone screens everywhere. Because after all, we all know that high-impact sports celebrities definitely eat fast food regularly. The thing about celebrities is, they like money as much as CEOs, which is why celebrities like Travis Scott pull in endorsement deals worth $20 million for a fast food endorsement. How much companies spend on celebrity endorsements are not made public because doing so would make it difficult for them to negotiate. However, a $20 million deal with one celebrity is indicative of just how much money is going toward those runaway celebrity endorsements flooding the world of fast food. It's not the sole cause of fast food price hikes, but it is definitely a factor. And is it working? The data says that it probably isn't, because less and less people are turning to fast food. High prices have turned off many customers, and fast food adjacent brands like Chili's and Applebee's have jumped on the opportunity. Why spend nearly $20 on a small freezer-burned burger served on a bland bun when for about $12 you can enjoy a full meal, appetizer, and a drink at Chili's as part of their latest marketing campaign? For many customers, the choice is starting to look like a no-brainer. For the first time in history, fast food is increasingly being seen as too expensive to be worth the convenience. It used to be that fast food was gross, but it was cheap and you knew you were making a trade-off in health for convenience and low cost. But now fast food companies expect you to pay premium prices for the same low-quality product. Meanwhile, CEOs often point fingers at workers demanding fair wages as the reason for rising food prices, all while inflating their own pay to astronomical levels. On top of that, they're passing the cost of hundreds of millions of dollars in tech investments and advertising directly to the consumer. But it doesn't have to be like this. In Denmark, fast food workers earn a living wage, and yet prices for menu items remain competitive, sometimes even cheaper than in the US. It's proof that better pay and affordable food can coexist. What do you think is really behind rising fast food prices? Fair wages, corporate greed, or something else? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Now go check out the real reason McDonald's is failing, or click this other video instead.